shelter's dark corner. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. The city lights flickered outside as John walked with heavy boots. His coat was wet, his face tired, but his heart carried something heavier than the storm he had heard about. The alien shelter at the edge of the industrial zone. People said it was a place of last chances, a place where unwanted beings were left to fade away. He pushed the iron door. It groaned loudly. Inside was a hall of dim yellow light and the smell of rust and damp cloth. Rows of cages lined the walls. Some had small alien children huddled in corners. Some had older ones with blank eyes staring at nothing. Volunteers moved slowly, feeding, cleaning, whispering to each other. John walked forward. His boots echoed on the cracked floor. He had come here without a clear reason. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the human urge to help someone more broken than himself. He told himself he was only looking, but deep down he already knew he would not leave empty-handed. The caretaker, an old woman with tired eyes, greeted him. "Looking for someone human?" she asked. Her voice had no hope in it, only routine. John nodded. "I just want to see." She sighed and waved her hand. "Then walk, but don't expect much. Most here are too broken to heal." He moved past cages. A young alien boy with green skin hissed at him. Another child with wings tucked against its body turned away. None looked at him with trust. Then, in the farthest corner, almost hidden in shadow, he saw her. She was small, much smaller than the others. Her frame looked fragile, her skin pale like starlight without warmth. Her eyes were large but dull, staring at the floor as if she had already accepted defeat. She hugged her knees tightly. Trying to disappear into herself, John stopped. His chest tightened. Something about her silence pulled him harder than any cry could. He asked softly, "Who is she?" The caretaker came closer. "That one? She is nothing. She does not speak, does not play, does not even cry anymore. We tried to place her, but no one wanted her. They called her the saddest one here. She won't last long." The words cut deep. John crouched near the bars, lowering his voice. "Hey," he whispered. The girl's eyes flickered, just for a second. They met his, and in them he saw not anger, not hatred, but deep sorrow, the kind that eats from the inside. His heart sank. "She is not for you," the caretaker said quickly. "Humans always think they can save one, but she is broken beyond fixing." John ignored her. He kept his eyes on the girl. She trembled as if expecting a blow. Slowly she whispered, her voice dry and weak. "Please, don't leave me." The sound was so soft he almost thought he imagined it, but it was real. His hands tightened on the bars. His chest burned. He had seen war. He had seen death. But nothing ever reached him like this tiny whisper from a dying spirit. He turned to the caretaker, his voice firm. "I will take her." The woman shook her head. "You don't understand. She wakes screaming every night. She won't eat. She hides from touch. She carries scars you cannot see." John's jaw clenched. "Then I will be the one to carry them with her." The caretaker studied him for a moment. Her face softened just a little. "Humans," she muttered, "always stubborn." She unlocked the cage with a reluctant sigh. The girl flinched as the door creaked open. Her body shrank smaller as if she expected pain. John bent down, moving slowly. He didn't reach out too quickly. He simply lowered his hand near her, palm open, showing she had a choice. For a long breath, nothing happened. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached forward, touching his hand lightly. Her skin was cold, but it was a touch of trust. Fragile, but real. He wrapped his coat around her gently. She weighed almost nothing, like carrying a shadow. She buried her face against his chest, her body shaking with silent sobs. He whispered, "You're safe now." His words were more promise than truth because deep inside he knew danger might follow. The caretaker watched them go, her face a mix of pity and surprise. "No one expected anyone to choose her," she murmured. But John did not look back. He walked into the rain with the fragile alien girl in his arms. The storm above seemed smaller compared to the storm inside his heart. He had no idea what future awaited them. No idea what shadows would come knocking. All he knew was this: he had chosen the saddest alien girl in the shelter, and nothing would ever be the same again. New home, a silent child. The rain finally stopped by the time John reached his small home on the edge of the city. The house was quiet, built of old stone and wood. It was not much, but it was safe. He carried the alien girl in his arms as if she might break if he let go. Her head rested against his chest, her eyes half closed, but there was no peace in her face, only fear hidden under silence. He pushed open the door. The warmth of the fireplace welcomed them. Shadows danced along the walls. The girl's eyes moved quickly, scanning every corner as if she was searching for threats. John set her gently on the couch, wrapping a blanket around her small frame. She did not speak. Her thin fingers gripped the blanket like it was a shield. John moved to the kitchen, preparing something simple, warm soup and bread. When he placed it on the table before her, she only stared at it, her eyes wide but empty. She did not reach for the food. Instead, she turned her face away, as if eating was something she no longer trusted. "You're safe," John whispered, again, sitting across from her, but his words were only sounds to her. She gave no answer, only silence. He sighed, wondering what kind of torment had carved away her spirit. He thought of the caretaker's warning. She won't eat. She won't talk. She won't heal. Was it true? The girl finally touched the bread, but instead of biting it, she sniffed it carefully like someone who had been poisoned before. Slowly, with trembling hands, she broke off the smallest piece and placed it on her tongue. She chewed, swallowed, and then stopped. Her eyes lifted toward John, cautious, testing. He didn't move, didn't speak, only watched. She took another piece, this time bigger, and for the first time, a tiny spark of life flickered in her dull eyes. Night came quickly. The city lights glowed faint outside the window. John showed her the small room he had prepared. It had a bed with clean sheets, a small lamp, and a stuffed toy left behind long ago by a neighbor's child. She stood at the doorway, frozen, staring at the bed as if it were a trap. "You can sleep here," John said gently. But she shook her head, stepping back. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled with terror. "No," she whispered. Her voice cracked like broken glass. John frowned. "Then where?" She pointed to the floor near the wall, a dark corner. Her body curled tightly against herself. John's chest ached. He knew she was not refusing the bed because she wanted the floor. She was refusing it because beds in her past must have been places of pain. He didn't push her. Instead, he brought another blanket, laid it down, and placed the toy near her. "All right," he said softly. "You choose, but you are safe here." She hugged the blanket, her eyes darting to the window, the door, and then finally resting on him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes stayed open long into the night, watching him as if she feared he might disappear. Hours later, he awoke to a sound, a small cry, broken and weak. He rushed to the corner. She was shaking violently, her face wet with tears. "No, don't, please don't hurt me," she whispered again and again, caught in a nightmare. John knelt beside her, his heart twisting. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but he feared his touch would scare her more. "Wake up," he whispered, his voice soft but firm. Slowly, her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. She gasped and pushed herself back against the wall, her breathing sharp, her small chest rising and falling like she had run 1,000 miles. John held his hands up, showing he meant no harm. "You're safe," he said once more. He repeated it until his voice became a rhythm. Her breathing slowed. Her body stopped shaking as hard. Finally, her head dropped forward, too tired to cry anymore. She whispered one word, so faint he almost didn't hear it. "Why?" John froze. Her question was not about nightmares, not about the food. It was about him. Why did he choose her? Why didn't he leave her in the dark corner like everyone else? Why did he care? He swallowed. Because no one deserves to be left behind, he said quietly. The words seemed to confuse her, but also soften her fear. She stared at him a long moment, then closed her eyes again. This time, her body slowly leaned sideways, resting against the wall. The blanket wrapped tightly around her. She fell into a restless but quieter sleep. John sat there on the floor beside her, watching the firelight fade into embers. He knew this was only the beginning. The girl was wounded in ways he could not see, and healing her would be harder than any battle he had ever fought. But in his heart he felt something strong, something he had not felt in years. He would not give up on her, and yet, as the night grew colder, John could not escape one thought. Somewhere out there were the people who had broken her. Somewhere, in the shadows, those who had left scars on her soul might still be searching. The girl's silence was heavy, but it was also hiding secrets. Secrets that could change both of their lives. A small sign of hope. The next morning, soft light entered through the window. The fire had died in the night. John sat half asleep in his chair. His body was stiff, but he refused to leave the girl alone. When he opened his eyes, he saw her still, curled in the corner, her blanket wrapped around her thin body. Her eyes were open, watching him silently. For a moment, they just stared at each other. She did not speak. He did not move. Then, to his surprise, she slowly stood. Her small feet touched the wooden floor. She walked to the table and picked up a piece of bread. She ate it slowly, carefully, but this time she did not hide or turn away. John's heart lifted. It was only bread, but it was also the first step toward trust. He smiled gently. "Good morning," he said. She didn't reply, but she didn't run back into the shadows either. That alone was a victory. The day passed quietly. John fixed some things around the house. He cut firewood, cleaned and cooked. The girl followed him. At a distance, she didn't speak, but her eyes studied him closely. She seemed to be measuring every move, testing if he would raise his hand in anger or show cruelty like others had done to her before. But John never did. He worked in silence, humming softly to himself, pretending not to notice her watching. By evening, a storm rolled in. Thunder echoed. Lightning cracked across the sky. The girl jumped at every sound, her hands covered her ears, her body shook. John placed another log on the fire, then sat down. He saw her trembling near the wall, her eyes wide with fear. Without a word, she left her corner and walked to him, her small steps uncertain. She climbed onto the couch beside him, her body pressed tightly against his side, her hands gripping his coat. She buried her face against his chest, her tiny frame trembling with every crash of thunder. John froze. He didn't move at first, afraid that any sudden motion might scare her away, but when she whispered, "Don't leave," in a voice so small and broken it made his heart ache, he slowly wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She didn't resist, instead she clung tighter. Her body shook, but not from fear of him, from fear of the storm. "It's all right," John whispered softly. "I'm here. I won't leave you." His voice was calm, steady. The thunder roared, but he kept speaking, each word a stone of safety. Slowly, the girl's shaking eased. Her breathing steadied. Her head rested fully against him. For the first time, she trusted his warmth. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, but inside something fragile bloomed. She fell asleep in his arms, her lips parted slightly, her face soft in rest. The sorrow in her eyes hidden by dreams. John looked down at her, his chest tight with emotion. He realized this was the first sign of hope, the first proof that she was still capable of trust, but hope was never simple. That night near midnight she woke again with a cry, her small hands clawing at the blanket. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Don't take me, don't lock me, please." John woke instantly, holding her gently. "It's just a dream. You're safe, I promise." She gasped for air, her eyes wild. But when she saw his face, she stopped fighting. Her hands clung to his shirt as if it was her only anchor. Why are you kind? She asked, her voice shaking, her words broken but clear. John swallowed, searching for an answer. He brushed her hair gently. Because you deserve kindness, he said. Because no one should live in fear. She stared at him, her eyes filled with confusion as if such words had never been spoken to her before. She leaned closer, her forehead pressing against his chest. She whispered something almost too faint to hear. I believe you. It was not loud, not strong, but it was the first time she admitted trust in her own voice. John felt something shift inside him. He knew the road ahead was long. He knew she still carried scars deeper than any wound. But that small whisper was more powerful than anything he had heard in years. It was a spark of hope, tiny but alive. The night grew quiet after that. The storm faded. Only the soft sound of rain remained. The girl finally slept without shaking, still holding his shirt tightly in her small hands. John stayed awake, staring into the fire, his thoughts heavy. If she had learned to trust even a little, it meant she could also learn to heal, but healing always comes with a cost. He could not shake the feeling that her past would not stay buried forever. Somewhere in the darkness, those who had broken her might still be looking, and if they came, they would not stop. John held her closer, whispering one last promise before sleep finally claimed him. No matter what comes, I will protect you. The secrets she hid days turned into a quiet rhythm. John went about his work, repairing tools, chopping wood, cooking meals. The alien girl followed him with her eyes everywhere he went. Sometimes, she sat in silence. Sometimes she touched objects as if they were strange treasures she had never known before. A cup, a chair, even a window fascinated her. She was like someone discovering the world for the first time. But the silence between them carried weight. John could see it. She was hiding something, not just pain, but memories too dark to speak. Every night when the house grew quiet, she would whisper in her sleep. Names, broken words, cries for mercy. Sometimes John caught fragments. Chains. Don't take me. Stop them. His heart grew heavy. He wanted to ask, but he feared pressing her too soon might shatter the fragile trust she had begun to give him. One evening, the fire crackled warmly. John sat sharpening his knife when he noticed her sitting near the flames. Her small hands were stretched to the heat. Her eyes reflected the light, but they looked far away, as if she were trapped in a place he could not see. Slowly she spoke, her voice thin but clear. They locked me, she whispered. John set his knife down gently. He leaned forward, giving her his full attention. Who did? He asked softly. Her lips trembled. The men with marks on their skin, they called me property. They laughed when I cried. They said I was too weak, too small, so I was only good for suffering. Her voice broke. She covered her face, shaking. John's fists clenched. His jaw tightened. He forced his voice to stay calm. You are not property, he said. You are not what they said. You are free now. The girl peeked through her trembling fingers, her eyes wide with doubt. Free? She whispered, as if the word was a dream too impossible to believe. Yes, free, John repeated firmly. No one will chain you again. Not while I am here. His voice carried weight. She stared at him a long moment, then lowered her hands. Slowly her body still shook, but something inside her shifted. That night she asked a question. Why do you stay with me? John looked at her, surprised. Because you matter, he said simply. She shook her head quickly. No. No one wanted me. Even at the shelter. They said I was too sad, too broken. They said I would never heal. Her eyes filled with tears. Why are you different? John's chest ached at her words. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he placed his hand gently over hers. Because I know what it feels like to be left behind, he admitted, his voice low. I fought. In wars, I lost people, I carried wounds no one could see, and I know sometimes the ones the world calls broken are the ones most worth saving. She stared at him, Her lips parted, her eyes glistened. For a moment, silence stretched between them, then she whispered, You are not like them. Later that night, John woke to the sound of soft humming. He opened his eyes and saw her sitting near the window, rocking back and forth. She held a small piece of metal in her hand, turning it over and over. He sat up slowly. What is that? He asked. She froze, then slowly showed it to him. It was a small tag with strange markings burned into it. They gave this to me, she said quietly. It means I belonged to them. If anyone sees it, they will know I escaped. They will come. Her voice cracked, her eyes wide with fear. She clutched the tag so tightly it cut into her skin. John stood and walked to her. He held out his hand. Give it to me. She hesitated, then placed it in his palm, her fingers shaking. He looked at the metal, hatred burning in his eyes. Without a word, he threw it into the fire. The flames hissed, swallowing the mark of her chains. She gasped, stepping back. You destroyed it, she whispered, her voice a mix of fear and disbelief. John nodded firmly. Yes, because you don't belong to them anymore. You are not theirs. You are not marked. You are only yourself. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She fell to her knees, covering her face. Her sobs shook the room, but these were not the same cries of fear. They were cries of release, of something breaking inside her. She whispered again and again, I am not theirs. I am not theirs. Until her voice grew hoarse, John knelt beside her, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. He didn't tell her to stop. He let her cry. He knew this was the beginning of her truth, the first step of freedom. But as the fire died down and silence returned, John felt unease grow inside him. If she was right, if those men with marks were still searching, then burning the tag would not erase the danger. It would only make it harder to hide. For the first time, John realized the truth. Her past would not stay in the shadows, it would come knocking. And when it did, he would have to stand between her and the darkness that once claimed her. The threat arrives. The days passed slowly. The girl began to move differently. She was still quiet, but she no longer stayed only in the corner. Sometimes she followed John into the garden, watching him cut wood or repair tools. Sometimes she touched the flowers, her small fingers brushing the petals like they were too fragile to exist. To John, these were small victories, signs of life breaking through her fear. But peace never lasts long. One afternoon, as the sun was sinking, John noticed shadows moving near the edge of his land. At first, he thought it was nothing, just animals or travelers passing by. But when he looked closer, he saw figures, tall and broad, their bodies wrapped in dark coats, symbols burned into their skin, the same marks the girl had described. John's chest tightened. He stepped back into the house, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. The girl sat near the fire, humming softly to herself. When she saw his face, her smile vanished instantly. She froze, her body trembling. They're here, she whispered before he could even speak. John knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders gently. Listen to me, you're safe here, I won't let them take you. Her wide eyes filled with tears. They always come back. They don't stop, she whispered. Her small body shook against his hands. A knock thundered on the door, heavy, cruel. It wasn't the knock of a guest, it was the demand of an owner. John stood slowly, his jaw tightening. He opened the door just enough to see 3 figures standing outside, their eyes cold, their skin marked with black patterns. The tallest one spoke, his voice rough. We're looking for something that belongs to us. John kept his face calm, though anger burned in his chest. I don't think you'll find it here, he said firmly. The man's lips curled into a cruel smile. A small one escaped, weak, silent. She's no good to anyone but us. Hand her over, human. You don't want our trouble. Behind him, the girl whimpered. Her voice cracked. No, please. John stepped further into the doorway, blocking their view. His voice dropped to steel. She doesn't belong to you. She's not property, not anymore. The men laughed, a sound without joy. You think you can keep her? She's marked. She carries our brand. She'll never be free. Step aside or we take her and maybe your house too. John's fists clenched. He had fought wars before. He had faced enemies stronger than himself, but never had he felt this much fury. He didn't move. His voice was low but deadly. If you try, you'll regret it. The men stared at him for a long moment. Then the leader smirked. We'll be back, he promised. His eyes glowed with threat. And when we return, you won't stop us. They turned, fading into the shadows, but their promise hung heavy in the air like poison. When John closed the door, the girl was crouched by the wall, her hands pressed to her head, rocking back and forth. They'll come. They'll take me. I can't go back. I can't. She whispered again and again. John rushed to her, kneeling down. He lifted her chin gently. Her tears streaked her pale skin. Look at me, he said firmly, his voice cutting through her panic. Her eyes met his, wet and trembling. They won't take you, do you hear me? I don't care who they are. I don't care how many come, you are safe here. She shook her head weakly. They are strong. They are cruel. They hurt everyone. You can't fight them. John placed his hand over hers, steady and strong. Then, let them come, I will fight them, I will not let them touch you again. His words burned with truth. She stared at him, confusion and hope colliding in her eyes. That night, John prepared. He locked the doors, checked his rifle, sharpened his knife. He knew this was no ordinary fight. These men were not thieves or strangers. They were hunters, and they believed the girl belonged to them. The firelight flickered across his face. As he sat awake listening for movement outside, the girl stayed close to him. She refused the bed again. Instead, she curled beside him on the couch, her small hand gripping his sleeve tightly. Her eyes half closed but never fully asleep. Every sound outside made her flinch. Her nightmares had come alive, walking in the shadows beyond the walls. Hours passed, but John did not rest. His thoughts churned. He knew when they returned, they would not knock. They would break. They would take. Unless he stood ready, he looked down at the girl, fragile but brave in her own way. She had already suffered enough. He would not let it happen again. As the wind howled through the trees outside, John whispered a vow into the night. They think you are broken. They think you are weak. But they are wrong, and I will prove it. For you, for us. I will fight. The girl stirred at his words, her eyes opening just enough to whisper back. You'll stay? John nodded, his voice steady. Always. She closed her eyes again, her breathing calming just a little. Her small frame pressed close to his side, but in his heart, John knew the truth. The threat had arrived, and soon the real battle would begin, standing together. The morning came with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. John stood outside his small home, scanning the tree line. His gut told him the hunters would return, not with words this time, but with force. Inside, the alien girl sat near the fire, hugging her knees. Her eyes followed John every time he stepped past the window. She was terrified. But there was also something new in her gaze, a flicker of strength as if his words from last night had taken root. John entered, setting his rifle against the wall. He crouched before her. They will come, he said calmly. And when they do, we will face them, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Her lips trembled, her voice was soft. I'm afraid. John nodded. So am I. Fear doesn't make us weak. It makes us fight harder. And you don't have to fight alone. We'll do this together. She stared at him, silent for a long time. Then slowly she reached out, her small hand gripping his. Together, she whispered. The word was fragile but real. It was the first time she had chosen to stand beside him, not behind him. That night the storm arrived, not from the sky but from the woods. Shadows moved between the trees. The hunters had returned, more of them. This time, their torches burned like cruel stars. Their voices carried across the wind, chanting her name as if she were still theirs. The girl's body shook, but she did not run. Instead, she stood beside John, clutching his sleeve tightly. They'll hurt you, she whispered. John's eyes stayed on the darkness ahead. Let them try, he said, his voice steady like steel. The door rattled with the first strike. Wood splintered. The girl gasped. John raised his rifle, firing a warning shot into the air. The sound cracked through the night. The hunters paused, then laughed, cruel and mocking. You think you can keep her, human? One of them shouted, She belongs to us, she is marked, give her up or die with her. John's heart thundered, but his hands were steady. He shouted back, She belongs to no one, not you, not anyone. She is free. The words echoed like a shield. The girl looked up at him, her wide eyes filled with something new. Pride. The hunters surged forward. The door burst open. Darkness spilled inside with them. John fired again, the blast pushing one back. The others roared, charging. The girl screamed, but instead of hiding, she grabbed a heavy pan from the fire. With trembling arms, she swung it at one of the attackers. The sound rang loud. The man staggered back, cursing. John turned, shock flashing across his face, but also pride. She had not run. She had fought. Good, he shouted. Don't stop. Keep fighting. His words gave her strength. She screamed again, louder this time, and threw burning embers from the fire at another hunter. The flames lit his coat, forcing him back. The fight raged inside the small home. John moved like a soldier, blocking strikes, firing, shoving them back. The girl stayed close, striking when she could, ducking when she had to. For the first time in her life, she was not just surviving, she was resisting. Finally, the leader pushed through, towering over them both. His marked skin glistened in the firelight. His eyes locked on the girl. You think this human can save you? He growled. His hand reached out, claws ready to drag her back into chains. But before John could react, the girl stepped forward, her small frame trembling, yet her voice strong. I am not yours, she shouted. The words cracked through the chaos. Her hand gripped the pan again, and with all her strength she struck the leader across the face. He stumbled back, blood on his lip, his eyes wide with rage. John seized the moment. He slammed the man against the wall, pressing the barrel of his rifle to his chest. She is free, John hissed. And if you come again, you'll never walk away. The leader glared at him, hatred burning, but for the first time he looked uncertain. He spat blood on the floor, then signaled to his men. Slowly they retreated into the night, their torches fading into the woods. Their threats lingered, but for now they were gone. The house was wrecked. Smoke from the fire filled the air. The floor was scattered with broken wood and ash. John leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. The girl dropped the pan, her small body shaking. She turned to him, her eyes wide. We did it, she whispered. John nodded, lowering himself to her level. Yes, together. She looked at her trembling hands, then at him. I was afraid, but I fought, she said softly. John smiled faintly. That's what courage is, being afraid and fighting anyway. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not only from fear. They were from pride, from something rising inside her. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for staying, for fighting, for not leaving me. John held her close, his heart heavy, but strong. You're not alone anymore, he whispered back. As the night grew quiet again, they both knew this was not the end. The hunters would return, stronger, angrier, but something had changed forever. She was no longer only the saddest alien girl. She was a fighter, and together, they would stand against whatever came next, more than adoption. The night after the battle was long. The house smelled of smoke and splintered wood. Broken pieces of chairs and shattered glass littered the floor. John sat in silence, his rifle resting on his knees. His eyes never left the doorway, though the hunters had already gone. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew danger had not ended. It had only paused. Beside him, the alien girl sat wrapped in a blanket, her small body bruised but her spirit unbroken. She had not returned to the corner this time. She sat close to him, her shoulder brushing against his arm. Her wide eyes stared at the fire, but there was no emptiness in them now. There was something else, a quiet determination. For a long time, neither spoke. The crackle of the fire was the only sound. Finally, the girl broke the silence. Her voice was soft but clear. I thought I would die when they came. I thought you would leave me, but you stayed. You fought. Her lips trembled. No one has ever fought for me before. John turned to her, his eyes heavy but steady. You're not alone anymore, he said. I promised you, and I'll keep that promise. She looked at him with tears shining in her eyes. Her small hand reached out, gripping his sleeve tightly. You're my family now, she whispered. The words caught him off guard. His chest tightened. For a soldier who had lost everything in war, family was a word he thought he would never hear again. He swallowed hard, then placed his hand gently over hers. Yes, he said, his voice low but firm. Family. The following days were filled with work. John rebuilt the broken door, fixed the shattered windows, cleared the mess. Through it all, the girl stayed near, not hiding but helping in her own way. She picked up small pieces of wood, carried tools, even tried to sweep the floor. Her movements were clumsy, but her effort carried meaning. Every small action said the same thing. I want to belong here. At night she still woke from nightmares, crying softly. But now when she reached out, she did not find only fear. She found John's steady arms pulling her close. She found warmth and safety. Slowly, the nightmares began to lose their power. She began to whisper less about chains and more about tomorrow. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, John took her outside. The air was cool, the sky painted with colors of fire and gold. She had never stood so freely under the open sky. Her eyes widened, wonder filling her face. It's beautiful, she whispered. John smiled faintly. Yes, and now you get to see it every day. It belongs to you as much as anyone. She turned to him, confusion flickering in her eyes. Me? But I don't belong anywhere. John shook his head firmly. You belong here, you belong with me. Not as property, not as a prisoner, but as family. His words carried weight, and she felt them. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Then she whispered, I want to believe that. John knelt down, looking into her eyes. Then believe because it's true, he said, his voice steady. She nodded slowly, a small smile breaking across her face. For the first time, it was not a weak smile of thanks, but a true one. Fragile, yet filled with life. But even in that moment of peace, John's mind carried caution. He knew the hunters might come again, they would not give up easily, yet something had changed. He was no longer protecting only a frightened child. He was standing beside someone who had begun to discover her strength. Together, they were no longer prey. That night, as the stars filled the sky, the girl curled beside him near the fire. Her small voice whispered before sleep took her. When they laughed at me, when they hurt me, I thought I was nothing. But you showed me I am something. You gave me a place. You gave me hope. John brushed her hair gently, his heart heavy with pride. You gave me hope too, he whispered. He realized then that it had never been just about adoption. It was not about saving her alone. It was about saving himself too, she had reminded. Him of what it meant to fight for someone, to love without reason, to believe in tomorrow. As the night grew quiet, John looked into the flames and made one last vow. No matter what comes, no matter who returns, we will face it together. His voice was steady, his heart unshaken. The girl stirred in her sleep, her hand gripping his tightly even in dreams, and for the first time, John believed in a future brighter than the past. Not because the world had changed, but because they had found each other. She was no longer the saddest alien girl at the shelter. She was his family, and together they would face the galaxy stronger than anyone expected.